Mr. Secretary, thanks for doing this. Good to see you.
Good morning, and thanks for the opportunity, Jacob.
My pleasure. You know, as you can see, I'm down here at the border, but before we talk about immigration, I wanted to ask you about the latest with regard to domestic terrorism. NBC News has learned that both DHS and the FBI put out a joint intelligence bulletin warning about domestic groups that might pose a threat to the United States Capitol today. What more do you know about that, and what is DHS doing today to protect lawmakers?
Jacob, I've articulated publicly and, of course, throughout our department that one of the greatest threats that we face in the homeland is the rise of domestic violent extremism. And one of our responsibilities in the department is to ensure that we're disseminating intelligence and information to our state and local law enforcement partners and to the communities so that we can equip the communities to guard against this growing threat. And the way in which we do so, with various means, but one of them is through the issuance of joint intelligence bulletins, or JIBs as they're commonly referred to, informing our local partners about the threat and enabling them to address it. I should say, if I may, that we approved the allocation of FEMA grant funds to state and local authorities to equip them with resources to battle this grave challenge.
What's the nature of the threat against the Capitol today specifically? And I'd also like to ask you about what you have learned about where DHS may have erred, where things might have gone wrong with your predecessors in the previous administration that led to the January 6th attack.
So we are watching the threat stream, the information, social media, other sources with respect to this particular day, March 4th. But quite frankly, we are vigilant every day, as we must be when the threat is as acute as it is in the domestic violent extremism context. And, you know, with respect to what transpired in the past, that is, of course, under review. Not so much from a point of view of accountability, quite frankly, Jacob, but from a point of view of lessons learned to make sure that if, in fact, any mistakes were made, they're not repeated, and we are delivering for the American people to the highest level possible.
Just real quick, you mentioned the FEMA grants towards domestic terrorism. Is DHS going to change its posture in any way with regard to domestic terrorism potential incidents?
We're going to change our posture as the intelligence and information dictate. That's what we do. We take a look at the data, we take a look at the facts, and we develop our posture accordingly.
Let's talk about, Mr. Secretary, what's going on here at the border, and including the latest numbers. NBC News has obtained data that shows, as of Tuesday, CBP had 1,763 unaccompanied kids in its custody. 625 of them were there longer than the legal 72-hour limit to be transferred out to HHS. That same day, my understanding is you briefed the President of the United States at the White House about the fact DHS projects 117,000 unaccompanied children. 117,000 could cross the border this year. That would be a record. Is that number accurate, first of all? And how do you plan on processing and treating those children who come to the United States humanely?
Jacob, let me, if I may, start at the very beginning, which is the fact that the prior administration really operated from a point of cruelty, and I spoke to that earlier this week. And they expelled children, minors under the age of 5 at times, at extraordinarily tender ages. That is a policy that we discontinued from the point of view of humanity. And what we are doing is building the capacity to address the needs of those children, and we are guided by some core principles. Number one, we act in the best interest of the children, and we act in the best interest of the American people. And thirdly, we adhere to our values and principles as a country. And so, in fact, the numbers are significant. The challenge is significant. And our plans are well underway as we build the capacity to address the needs of the children, and we are rebuilding from scratch.
just to follow up on that, two things. One is that number 117,000 projected unaccompanied minors entering the United States this year, is that accurate? And number two, you all at DHS have already opened one soft-sided tent facility to process migrants that are coming into the country. There are plans for another. HHS has opened an influx shelter. Are you planning on opening more? Are you advocating that HHS should open more temporary influx shelters?
I don't have the precise number in mind, Jacob. That number does resonate, and we understand the significance of the number of children. It speaks to the fact that there is, quite frankly, pent-up desperation from three countries that have suffered so much violence, so much poverty, and other adverse conditions. We are building the capacity that we need to in order to address the needs of the children and to address the public health imperative for the American people. And we will build the capacity and are planning to do so as the migration requires.
Sorry, does that mean opening more temporary tent facilities for DHS? And do you need more from HHS to reduce capacity at CBP?
We are looking at the types of shelters, a number of different types of shelters, Jacob, that are required in the best interest of the children. We are very mindful of the conditions in which the children will be held by Health and Human Services until they are placed in the care and custody of their sponsors, oftentimes are, of course, family members here in the United States.
How far are we from both, you mentioned at the White House earlier in the week, HHS co-locating personnel in CBP facilities to reduce the strain on those HHS facilities, and also CBP hiring, as was appropriated by Congress, child welfare professionals to be actually inside the CBP facilities? Because as far as I know, that has not yet been done. At least no report has been submitted to Congress on that front.
We already are co-locating with HHS. We already have had at least one individual on a pilot basis doing the work of HHS in the Border Patrol facility so that the sponsor could be identified and vetted. Because remember, we have to place the child in the care of an individual who is responsible and can execute on that responsibility for the well-being of the child. So we've already begun that, and we are looking at indeed hiring individuals in the Department of Homeland Security to care for those children, address their mental and other health needs in the Border Patrol facility for the short period of time that they should be in a Border Patrol facility as a pass-through to the HHS facility before being placed with a sponsor.
Just as a point of clarification, you're saying Border Patrol facility. Is it a pilot program in one facility only, or is there HHS personnel across the southwest border in CBP facilities?
I know that process already has begun. I don't have the particular numbers in mind, and I'm happy to follow up. But that we're already on top of that, and that has begun.
Thank you for that clarification, Mr. Secretary. You mentioned that the administration is unwinding what you call the cruelty of the Trump administration's immigration policy. That includes stopping new entrants to the Remain in Mexico program, processing migrants through that Remain in Mexico program to come into the United States. It also means, as you've said, stopping the expulsion of children under Title 42, the public health law that is the justification of the Trump administration was to stop the spread of COVID in the United States. Families are still being expelled under Title 42. Columbia University put out a letter from public health experts saying there continues to be no public health rationale for keeping out asylum seekers. Do you believe, Mr. Secretary, that the migrants currently barred from the U.S. under Title 42 do indeed have a right to seek asylum in the United States?
The Title 42 authority is an authority administered by the Center for Disease Control. It's a CDC authority. It's a public health authority, and we are executing the directive of the CDC. It has made a determination that Title 42 authority should be employed to address the public health needs of not only the American public, but of the migrants themselves. So when we have to rebuild an asylum process from scratch, that takes time. And if, in fact, we do not have the capacity now to address the asylum seekers' claims in an orderly, efficient, and safe manner, because that system was dismantled in its entirety by the prior administration. Then there are public health implications, and we have to address those implications not only for the benefit of the communities in the United States, but for the migrants themselves. Our hope is to reduce the need to rely on the public health authorities under Title 42 as the capacity to process the asylum seekers in an orderly and safe way increases. And that is precisely what we are doing.
But does that mean you believe, Mr. Secretary, that those migrants still do have a right to seek asylum under international law?
I believe that asylum seekers, individuals who claim credible fear by reason of their membership in a particular social group, should have the opportunity to present those claims to the United States authorities, and they should be able to present those claims in an orderly, efficient, and safe way, and in a way that does not actually imperil their public health, nor the public health of the American communities which they seek to enter.
President Biden says all Americans will at least, there will be enough vaccine for all Americans by the end of May. Do you expect Title 42 to be lifted by then?
I don't. That is a question for the public health experts, Jacob. It is our effort to reduce reliance on Title 42 as swiftly as possible to address the public health imperative on the one hand, and to be able to process asylum claims of individuals on the other.
Just quickly, I wanted to ask you about deportations. BuzzFeed News reported that over 900 Haitians have been deported just in the beginning of February alone, despite the fact that President Biden had said he was going to pause deportations for 100 days, and also despite the fact that an internal DHS report said they may face harm if returned to their home country. Why are those Haitians being deported, and why are deportations continuing?
There are a number of reasons, Jacob. Number one, the president, you correctly note, actually the acting Secretary of Homeland Security on January 20th issued a pause on deportations or removals for 100 days so that the Department of Homeland Security can assess the situation and determine how best to use its removal authorities. That pause was enjoined by a court in the Southern District of Texas. So we are, of course, obligated to follow the law, as we always do. And so the pause on deportations was prevented from being implemented. And we could not expel those Haitians. And there are individuals from other countries as to which expulsion is not available into Mexico or into other countries. And so they were returned, in fact, to Haiti and other countries that do accept them, the ultimate countries of origin. Many of the Haitians actually came in through Mexico from other countries in South America.
Let's talk about family separation and the reunification task force, of which you are the chairman. This is an extraordinarily important undertaking by the federal government. I'm here in Otay Mesa, where Miss L, the namesake of the lawsuit that won the reunification of the thousands of families separated by Trump, was actually detained before she sued ICE, and the order was put down by the federal judge to reunify the families. You made the extraordinarily important announcement earlier in the week that separated families who have been parents who have been deported to home country will have the opportunity to come back to the United States. I wanted to ask you about families who are reunited but are now in their home country because either they were reunited here and then deported, or they were reunited in home country. Are they going to have an opportunity to come back to the United States as well, Mr. Secretary?
We're going to take a look at that issue, but if I can take a step back, it's an issue that is of grave importance to me, and I know, quite frankly, having read your compelling writings on the subject, an issue of grave importance to you, and it hopefully is an issue of grave importance to every American, because to speak of the cruelty of the past administration, there's no more powerful example, regrettably, than the intentional separation of a child from his or her parent or parents in order to deter migration, and often to deter individuals who are seeking asylum in this country. We're extraordinarily dedicated to this mission. We will not rest until we achieve it. I was very proud to announce that Michelle Brunet is the executive director of this task force, a brilliant and extraordinarily committed human rights lawyer. We are going to get this done.
Just one more on the family separations, Mr. Secretary. The Attorney General is a member of the task force as well, or when he is confirmed will be a member of the task force. Will his role be to look into potential criminality of members of the Trump administration?
I think we are focused right now, Jacob, on reuniting the families and restoring them to the best of our abilities. This will be an all-of-government effort. It is not just the Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice. It's also the Department of State working with our international partners, the Department of Health and Human Services, to bring whatever health relief we can to the families. And we're going to work, as I mentioned, with international organizations, our international partners, and the private sector. This is all of America effort.
How is it possible that the task force can issue a report so that it never happens again if there is not a holistic investigation into potential criminality of the Trump administration? I
haven't excluded anything, but what I'm focused on right now is reuniting the families. And in terms of not happening again, our intention also in the task force, after the reunification of the families, after restoration of the families to the best of our abilities and as fully as the law permits, is to build institutional safeguards to make sure it does not happen again.
And that includes financial restitution, mental health services to the families?
We are taking a look at all opportunities to restore these families, to bring stability and health to them. As I said earlier this week, we're going to take a look at all the options and lean forward. Some lightning round questions. Is DHS planning on closing family detention centers? Right now, Jacob, we are taking a look at the challenge at the border, making sure that we address that to address the needs of the migrants themselves and the American public. And we're taking a look at the immigration system writ large and seeing what reforms we can achieve to ensure that the manner in which we address the needs of individuals looking for a better life adheres to the principles and values of our country and its proudest traditions. Just to be clear, President Biden tweeted during the campaign, children should be released from ICE detention with their parents immediately. That would seem that he would like to end family detention. That's not the case, or you can't commit to that at this point? Detention facility is not where a family belongs. Are you going to end the use of private immigration detention centers in DHS? The president asked DOJ to do that very thing, but he hasn't asked DHS to do that yet. Jacob, I'm going to take a look at the immigration system writ large and decide what reforms are needed. I'm going to do that in partnership with community stakeholders, of course, the agencies that I oversee, state and local law enforcement. We're going to be collaborative. We're going to be a partnership, and I'm going to make the ultimate decisions in executing the president and the vice president's vision for a better nation and to build back better. That's what I'm going to do. Just on the ground here, final question. The Border Patrol, there's great interest. You have an acting CBP chief, an acting ICE director, but you have Rodney Scott, the chief of the Border Patrol, who's been here and was here under President Trump, appointed by President Trump. Are you going to replace Rodney Scott? I haven't made any personnel decisions yet, Jacob, and I owe it to my people to follow due process. That's something that is a principle of the law, and it's a principle of my leadership. Secretary Mayorkas, it's excellent to talk to you, really great to talk to you, and I hope to see you down here at the border soon. Thank you so much, Jacob. Likewise.